What's good, tinfoilers? From is back with episode 8, and it's called Thresholds. And unlike last week's slow-paced story, this one comes in hot with some major story reveals that should satisfy even those tough-to-please fans. This is going to be a long one, so let's get right into it, but not before I say hello to the patrons, these fine people you see here. But also, a massive shout-out to Michael David Smith, the newest patron. Thank you, Michael, for supporting the channel, and I hope this shout-out puts a smile on your face. Welcome aboard. That sounds like something you're interested in. You can check the description for the links. Also, I gotta say it, spoilers abound. Please make sure you're good with that. Otherwise, save this video for later and come back after you've been caught up. Okay, tinfoilers, this is gonna be a good one, so I hope you're suited up because it's time to dive. Episode 8 begins with Boyd and Fatima in a shed. This is happening immediately after the events of the previous episode where Fatima unalives Tilly with the gardening shears. Apparently, Boyd got word from Ellis and he snuck Fatima out of town and away from suspicious eyes. Tilly's body has yet to be discovered, but Boyd needs things to go this way to buy time while he tries to figure out what the next step is going to be. Jade, Tabitha, Jim, and Ethan return to town after spending some time out at the lake cabins talking about Tabitha's childhood dream and those red painted stones. Jade heads over to the bar, but he chooses not to drink this time, and this is because he's thinking about what dead Tom told him back at the bottle tree. He needs to be sober if he's going to solve this riddle, and it seems like he's committed to doing it with a clear head. Henry happens to be using the bathroom to Jade's surprise, and the two finally meet for the first time. In the next scene, one of the townies discovers Tilly's remains, and he immediately puts this on blast. Now, both Elgin and Mary happen to be within an earshot, but the weird thing is how Elgin puts down the camera and it takes another snapshot on its own. Obviously, this is some more kimono lady action, but what is she trying to tell him this time? We'll have to come back to that. In the next scene, we move over to the clinic where Julie is about to head out after spending the night. But before this happens, Julie suggests that she and Randall go back to the ruins where they got those crazy vibes. Now, Randall says no thanks to the idea. He thinks it will only make things worse. And for the first time ever, I agree with Randall. In the next scene, we move back over to Boyd and Ellis, and they're going over their story to prevent Fatima from being found out. Ellis wants to take the high road and be honest about it, thinking the townies will understand if they explain that Fatima just wasn't herself. But we all know that this is not how the story will be received. Boyd then heads over to the scene of the crime, pretending to find out about this for the first time. His biggest fan, Officer Acosta, is already on the scene along with Cheney, who seems very disturbed by the whole thing. Boyd needs to keep all suspicion away from Fatima, so he suggests that the killer might be a newcomer in town, and he and Ellis will take a look into that angle. This is when the first wrinkle in Boyd's plan rears its head. Donna arrives and immediately casts suspicion on Sarah as the potential killer. A reminder that others in town will also likely look at Sarah as the guilty party by default. Someone is going to have to take the blame for this, according to Donna, and she's probably right about that. Boyd's in quite the pickle here. He has to protect Fatima while also making sure an innocent party doesn't take the blame. Meanwhile, Sarah is doing her best Jasper impression in the next scene, but Victor isn't that impressed. Victor starts tripping because this whole get Jasper to talk thing isn't going the way he planned at all. In the next scene, Jim and Tabitha are at home in the kitchen, and Jim is still being Mr. Naysayer. He tells Tabitha about the creepy phone call from the Thomas monster. I guess we're calling it that. But he's doing this as a way of saying, hey, this town is just messing with us, and that's all that it is. No need to get too crazy. Jim is freaked out by the fact that this town seems to know things about them that it shouldn't. He still believes that Tabitha's efforts are a waste of time though, because he believes that it's just part of the town's manipulative psychological torture program designed specifically for them. The conversation is interrupted by a knock at the door. It's Sarah, and she's there looking for Tabitha to get Victor because he refuses to talk to anybody but her. Elgin is at the clinic looking for a band-aid when he runs into Randall, who apologizes for the way he acted towards him on the bus ride coming into town. There's a brief moment of levity when Elgin apologizes for ralphing all over his shirt on the bus the day that they arrive. Could there be an Elgin-Randall coalition forming here? Probably not. The thing is, Elgin wasn't really looking for a band-aid, because as soon as Randall exits the scene, he goes for this box that says primary Y-type blood set. I'm not a doctor, despite what y'all think, so I had no idea what this was. A quick look up and I found that this device is basically medical tubing for transfusing blood. So he wants to do something involving blood, but for who and why? It must have something to do with whatever it is he saw in that Polaroid, if I were to hazard a guess. So back over to Victor again, who seems to think that because Tabitha was the one that triggered his memory of his sister, Eloise, well then she might also be the key to unlocking Jasper's secrets. We also learn a few details about how Victor operates. He says that he draws the pictures so that he can remember, but whatever it is that Jasper knows is something he's never drawn. Yeah, that's not ominous at all. Tabitha tries to jog his memory by asking about the doll, and lo and behold, Victor starts to remember things, like how Jasper told Christopher important things that they need to know. Then we get this scene with Jim leaving the house just as Julie arrives, and she's told to watch Ethan while Jim goes out to take care of something. He's being intentionally vague here. So Julie seems intent on heading back to the ruins, and she's thinking about taking Ethan with her. I think that's a terrible idea, but I'll let this one slide because they're just kids at the end of the day. Now that thing that Jim needed to take care of was telling Jay to leave his wife out of his crazy escapades, because it's only making things worse for her, and of course, Jade does not agree. Jade's opinion is basically that Tabitha's an adult and she can do what she wants, or better said, don't talk to me, talk to your wife. I can't argue with that one. Ellis visits Fatima at the shed, and he tries to reassure her that things will work out, but she's not too sure about that. She insists that whatever it is that made her attack Tilly is still present, and it makes her dangerous to anyone near her. Ellis hands her a lucky handkerchief, which made me wonder if this is one of those special items with sentimental value that the monsters seem to love so much. Are we gonna see this handkerchief nestled down in the caves at some point? We've got to wonder if this item might be of significance later on. Fatima has a moment with this keepsake, and then all of a sudden the kimono lady appears in the shed with her. She's there for a moment, and then she disappears just as quickly. Just checking in. Okay, this is getting interesting because someone else is finally seeing her, and the fact that it's Fatima must mean there's a connection between these two and Elgin. So finally some answers regarding the Polaroid and Elgin's decision to grab the medical tubing. He got the call from the kimono lady to collect some of his blood for some reason, and it's while he's doing this that the camera takes another photo, but we don't see what it is just yet. But if I had to guess, I'd say it's the shed where Fatima is hiding out. Now back at the town bar, Henry's thrown back a few, and it's loosened up his lips a little bit. He decides to give Jim some simple, straightforward man-to-man advice regarding Tabitha, and that's to shut up and listen sometimes. No doubt a lesson he learned from not listening to Miranda when she was trying to explain things to him way back when. Good news is that it looks like the message got through to Jim, but he also lets us know that his obsession with controlling things comes from his fear of being a bad father. I don't know, maybe you shouldn't say that out loud, Jim. The town is listening. Then again, maybe it's too late for that to even matter. So Julie did bring Ethan to the ruins. A terrible idea, but what are you gonna do? But this scene is important because Julie reveals a little bit about what's going on with her. According to her, she keeps hearing the sounds of people screaming ever since she woke up from the cicada monster's embrace. Whose screaming is she hearing? Believe it or not, we get answers later. The other part of the reveal is that this place, the ruins, seems to be the only place where she doesn't hear the screams. She says everything goes quiet here. She also says there's something drawing her to this place, like it wants her to enter the space. Now this is the same space where Boyd switched over to another reality, or maybe it was a vision, but it's where he comes across Martin, his old blood-wormed, addled buddy from that time he was stuck in the well. So Julie's with Ethan and she asks him what should they do next, according to what he knows from his fairy tale stories. So again, the connection to Ethan's fairy tale is coming back around again, so we need the details of that story. I have a feeling it's key. Princess and the lake has to mean something. I'm almost ready to say the princess in Ethan's story is the kimono lady, and Ethan's presence may have conjured this into existence. I'm not there yet, but I'm almost there. Ethan does have some advice though, and it's that she's at a threshold, as he put it. He even offers to join her if it'll help. After taking each other's hand, the two take a few steps into the broken archway path, and it's not long before Ethan disappears and Julie finds herself back in that space where we met Martin. She's traveled there by sheer will or belief, hard to say, but she's been transported in some way. While inside the space, Julie seems to have gone back to when she, Randall, and Mary were possessed by the cicada monster. This is before Boyd saves them. Is this the source of the screaming that she keeps hearing? The screams appear to overwhelm her, and then we cut to Ethan, back in the reality that they started in. But now Julie is writhing on the ground like she's having a seizure. Did Julie walk back into the cicada monster's trap? Okay, back to that dang Jasper back at Sarah's basement. Tabitha is asking Victor questions, seeing if she can spark a memory for him. But he's easily frustrated by the difficulty he has remembering what happened that night. At this point, I'm still waiting for this dummy to sit up and start talking to them all of a sudden. Sarah chimes in and she's asking about the weather the day he heard Jasper talk, and Vic begins to remember that he was playing with Eloise that day. He also remembers that it was at the church that all of it went down. But of course, we all figured that out from the images of the original scene. Boyd and Ellis are at odds over how to move forward. Ellis wants to tell the truth because he naively thinks people will understand and be forgiving. Don't worry, Ellis, life will beat that attitude out of you soon enough. Now, he seems to think that he and Fatima can live in a tent while the town gets over things. Boyd, on the other hand, thinks that's a bad idea. And he thinks that the tent is an even worse idea because he isn't sure Fatima is safe to be around like that. Then Donna rolls into the scene, reads the room, and starts asking questions. She knows they're hiding something. Uh-oh. So Boyd spills and tells her the truth, and she's floored. Now back over to Ethan, and he goes out to get help for Julie, who is still on the ground seizing, but then he runs into Acosta and Cheney. The two were out canvassing for Tilly's murder when they run into a panicked Ethan. Meanwhile, Julie is still stuck in this alternate world, but a strange thing happens when all of a sudden, the screaming stops and the three chained up people on the walls go poof. Julie hears Boyd's voice coming from that narrow pit of a well. We recall him being in there the day he escaped into the faraway trees, and she sees Martin chained to the wall. Julie somehow went back in time and experienced this, but why? Martin instructs Julie to throw a rope down for Boyd. So is she really the one that did this for him that day? Maybe this was what her purpose was. Anyway, right after doing this, Martin tells her she's gotta leave because it isn't safe. Then he too vanishes into thin air. What in the world is going on here? I'm sorry, what was that? You say this isn't weird enough for you? Well, once Julie leaves the area, she appears to be back in the caves, below their first house in town. And we know this is after the big collapse because we can hear Tabitha and Victor in the caves as well, just like they were when Vic helped her escape the labyrinthine tunnels that day. Soon after this, we begin to hear Raggedy Ann Cooey kids screaming and repeating the only words they seem to be capable of uttering. This is about the time when Ethan arrives with help and Julie snaps out of her dream, happy to see that Ethan is okay. Okay, so what did we just witness here? Or an even better question, why was Julie able to do this in the first place? I don't know if this is real. Probably part of a vision because the places she went to aren't supposed to be connected the way that they are, right? Unless, of course, time and space doesn't work like it does in the real world. Now, back over at Boyd's office, he and Donna are having the conversation we expected them to have. Donna wants Fatima brought back into town to face justice, while Boyd wants to buy time to figure out how to spare her from the box. Things get uglier when Donna tells Boyd that he won't be able to convince the townies to let Fatima live because they no longer believe in him. But Boyd won't have it any other way, and he insists on keeping Fatima at his place. But Donna lays down the gauntlet. Either he tells the townies, or she will. Okay, so we're heading to the basement of the church with this dummy, and he'd better talk this time because we paid good money to see a cursed dummy speak. But that's not in the cards, unfortunately. When Vic goes down to the basement, he begins to remember things more clearly, and it's revealed that it wasn't Jasper that was talking to Christopher that fateful night. It was the boy in white. The answers to the end are at the beginning. Sounds like he's saying, in order to undo this pretzel, we've got to go back to the beginning and solve the riddle of the Raggedy Kids. And yes, I'm going to call them Raggedy Kids every single time. But also pay attention to his mannerisms here. He doesn't seem to move or act like a real kid. He moves more like a Power Ranger. He gestures strangely and almost doesn't seem human. He also says that it started with the children. So those Raggedy Kids are to blame for all of this? I'm kidding, of course, but it does make sense if those kids are being used by the town in some way. Maybe the town is using them as a source for sustenance. Maybe they gave birth to the original nightmares that created this place. But we do get confirmation that they are key to getting out of here. But Victor also implies that the kids were victims and that their quote-unquote loved ones did this to them somehow. This dialogue gave me culty sacrifice vibes right away. Were they part of some ritual, sacrificed by their parents or families to spare the lives of the other members in the town? Sounds like a Fromville plot if you ask me. Anyway, according to Victor, the children were born in the dark, which we could take to mean that they were ignorant to hope, but that someone somehow planted the seed of hope in them before they got on those stones. That specific act led to the creation of the root symbol and the faraway trees. And maybe this is how they get out of here. The boy in white told Christopher that going through the tree was essential to saving the kids, but Christopher wouldn't listen because he's been lied to enough already. It turns out that the reason why Vic's mom went through the tree is because Vic told her about this incident. She took Christopher's place. Okay, so back over to Elgin, who makes good on the lead given to him by the kimono lady. He finds Fatima at the shack, and the two apparently take off somewhere because Boyd and Ellis arrive at the shed to find it empty. So In the next scene, we get even more answers. Elgin has taken Fatima to the hidden room at the back of the cellar according to the wishes of the kimono lady apparently. But he does so under the pretense that Fatima is going there to meet Ellis. She is not. This is not true. Sensing something is off, she tries to leave, but Elgin tells her not only that she is meant to be there, but that she is also truly pregnant. It's just that the baby is not hers. So we do have a supernatural pregnancy on our hands, but the question is what kind of baby and for what purpose? Elgin forces her to stay down in the cellar against her will, and he seems to truly believe that this is something that has to happen. We can't say for sure that this kimono wearing ghost lady has good intentions just yet, so I'm still skeptical. For all we know, this child might belong to whatever evil is in this town, and they might be helping the wrong side. Either way, Fatima isn't leaving the cellar. At least not until she gives birth to whatever it is that's invisibly gestating inside of her. I'm gonna venture a guess and say, given the changes we've seen in her, this probably won't end well for her. Also, let it be said that we can't always trust Victor's memories because he completely forgot about what actually happened that night, which was huge. Kind of like how he forgot he had a sister. We just can't trust this guy's memories. It makes me wonder what else he'll remember that might change the game later on. This episode is so much better than episode 7. So as usual, I've got a few questions before I go. What do you think the plan is for Fatima and her baby? Why do the instructions for Elgin involve collecting his own blood? What's the plan there? Did Julie time travel back to that night to save Boyd? Or was this some kind of message to Julie in the form of a nightmare? And finally, what do you make of the boy in white's message? How will saving the kids also save the townies? Alright, that's a wrap. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, especially if you made it to the end. 2 more episodes to go, and I've got the feeling things will ramp up even more before the finale hits. Silo begins this week, so look for those recaps to drop by the weekend. Be safe out there, tinfoilers, and as always, be good to yourself, be good to others, and until next time, off you go.